So, welcome everyone to the latest webinar in our Engineerica Education Keynote Series. We are very pleased to be bringing you this complimentary presentation, and we are very happy to see you here today. For those of you who are new to us, Engineerica specializes in academic center management systems for higher education. You might be familiar with our software applications, including AccuTrack, Academia, and AccuCampus. I do want to give a special welcome to any Engineerica clients joining us today. And for those of you who are not yet clients, I do want to just quickly let you know we are offering a complimentary summer or fall trial of our most popular center management system, and that is Academia. This gives you the opportunity to use Academia for an entire semester risk-free to see if it helps make management of your center and data collection easier. So if you're interested in that, you can send me an email at rachelc@engineerica.com. That's rachelc@engineerica.com, and we'll also put that in the chat momentarily. We started this keynote series for our clients and contacts who want to learn more about best practices and trends in higher education. Each month, we feature a distinguished speaker to talk about hot topics in the academic support field. Next month, our speaker will be Luke Matulewicz from Kansas State University, who will be speaking about embedded tutoring. So we'll make an announcement through email and social media when registration opens, so do be on the lookout for that. A quick introduction to myself. I'm Rachel Cook. I'm a client manager with Engineerica. I was previously a learning center manager for 6 years. So like all of you, I am very passionate about higher education and student success. I also have with me Nick Armstrong, one of our technical support specialists, who's here as my backup and also to help with any technical issues that come up on our end, the speaker's end, or yours. And with that, I am pleased to introduce you to this month's speaker. Julie Loppacher is the director of the Kortschak Center for Learning and Creativity at USC. In her first year with USC, the National Collegiate Learning Center Association awarded the Kortschak Center the President's Award for Outstanding Contributions to Students, which was a first for the center. With nearly 20 years experience supporting students, Julie works to find new and creative ways to enhance the process of learning for all students. So without further ado, Julie, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. My name is Julie Loppacher, and I use she, hers pronouns. I share my pronouns so that nobody has to make any assumptions. And this is good practice for us as educators to model for our students. Please hold for one moment as my connection was just lost. So let's make sure that we can get back online. One of the things that I always like to share with these elements, with any of these workshops that I do, is that this is the beginning of the conversation, right? So today, hopefully we spark some interest, you get some ideas, but this is not a workshop where in and of itself you leave here. This is the start of a discussion. And because there are so many of us on this line, I'm hoping that collectively we can grow together and really come up with some great strategies to support our students in the future. All right, it's telling me my connection has been reestablished, so that's awesome. So we're going to try to get this going right now. Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. All right, so this is everything we're going to talk about today. Holistic strategies for meeting the needs of students in 2022 and beyond. As I mentioned, my name is Julie Loppacher. I'm the director of the Kortschak Center for Learning and Creativity at the University of Southern California. I've been trying to help students for almost 20 years now, and my area of focus is in learning structures, advocacy for students with disabilities, and really helping any of the institutions that I'm able to work with build really inclusive educational practices. So that's the foundation where I start from today. If you have questions as we're going through, or if you want something repeated, please just put that in the chat. Rachel's going to help me out and bring any questions that might arise up right away. And so I apologize. I don't know why this interface isn't ideal for the captions. Okay, so let's hear. I want to know who's here today. So there is a poll. Tell us what your role is at your institution.
Okay, I am going to go ahead and launch that poll.
And I ask these questions because it can really help me as we move through it if I know that we have a greater percentage of, for example, our students. Sometimes we see a lot of tutors show up at these types of events. That is not the case today, and that's okay. So we're primarily professional tutors, coach or learning specialists, and program and learning center managers. Great. We've got a lot of good stuff for you.
Yep. All right. Did you want me to show the responses so everyone could see
Sure,
the percentage?
yeah, let's all,
Okay.
just so you all know who's hanging out with us today.
Yeah.
This is great.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Very few students, which is expected, but we are happy to see some students here today. That's very cool.
And I'm thrilled every time the faculty come out. This is wonderful. We love working with you.
All right.
Great.
Back to you.
Okay. So, let me see. Here we go. All right, here's what we're going to talk about. We just did a welcome. We're going to spend a little time laying the landscape of learning today. We're going to talk about college students today. We're going to talk about the barriers to learning and accessing strategies for success. That should be one line, I apologize. And then hopefully we're going to have time to chat. And a lot of what we're going to talk about is hopefully fodder for you to reflect on. All right, like I mentioned, this is a start of the discussion. So, all right, so we would not be able, we wouldn't be doing it justice talking about higher education today if we didn't spend a little time talking about the ACEs or the adverse childhood experiences. Are folks familiar with the adverse childhood experiences study? They call it the greatest study you've never heard of, the most influential study you've never heard of. Is there anybody in the chat familiar with ACEs?
I'm seeing a few no's. I'm actually seeing a couple of yeses. Yes.
Okay,
very
great.
familiar. Yes, but mostly no's.
Okay, wonderful. This is a great place to start. So the adverse childhood experiences is a survey that asks students a variety of questions in terms of what they have experienced. And these are things like mental illness in the home, abuse in the home, exposure to violence. So it has this whole category of trauma that students have experienced. And Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris, she took a look, because these adverse childhood experiences arose out of an obesity trial. So the way it started was there was a doctor, I can never pronounce his last name, so I call him Dr. V. He was trying to help folks lose weight. And he saw that even though people were very successful on this, in this trial at losing weight, they were dropping out. And he couldn't figure out why. And as it turned out, it was the exposure to these adverse childhood experiences. So Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris sort of took another angle of this and started examining, okay, how does this impact students who learn in terms of your ACE score? All right. And one of her findings is the odds of having learning or behavior problems in school were 32 times higher as kids with no adverse childhood experiences. So if a student experiences 3 or 4 things on this scale, they're going to be 32 times higher to experience some sort of learning and behavior problems. This is huge, right? Because we know that trauma today populates or can happen in a lot of different ways. And this ACEs scale is gaining traction in higher education. We'll dig into this a little bit more as we go along, but that is something so important to start with. All right, and now, so what is the landscape? We've got students coming in who have spent the last couple years of high school online. We know that the CDC and the US Surgeon General has declared anxiety and depression a public health crisis. We've got the world teetering on the edge of war potentially. We've got unrest. We've got horrible mass shootings. Some are race-based, some are just awful. And then we still have COVID-19 in the background. This is what our students are looking at today. And then I always think it's so important because I believe in my heart that this misconception still exists. We have students coming out of high school, so the staircase on the left, all right, yeah, college, you will see that if you really look at it, the college, the height between 12 and college is a little bit higher. But I think the reality is the staircase on the right, in that there is a huge gap between high school graduation and college. And that gets missed. That gets missed all the time. And I understand it, right? High schools have so much pressure to what? To get students into college. And the colleges say, okay, we'll take care of you when you get here. But for some students, that first little bit is almost insurmountable. We don't do enough job collectively as higher education within the structure of orientation, within the structure of welcome to university. This is going to be really hard. We don't do that. We say, welcome, we're so excited that you're here, and we are, but it's going to be really, really hard. We need to collectively do a better job normalizing the struggle and then saying, don't worry. Yes, it's going to be hard, but don't worry, because we've got you. Within that space between grade 12 and college, there's a lot of support. And that's why we're all here today, because we know we are that support and we want to help them successfully cross that threshold. And then I also think it's important to add right now that because of COVID and because of online learning, we have students at our institutions that do not have the institutional knowledge that we sort of implicitly anticipate that they do, right? We expect our juniors to be at a certain level, when the reality is they've only had, our rising juniors have only been on campus a year and a half. And so they're probably missing some of the social growth. They're probably missing some of the implicit knowledge that you get from years on a campus. And I think that's important too, because that impacts their experience as learners. So who are our college students today? And so we're going to talk a little bit focusing primarily on traditional undergraduate age students. Now, we do know that with the advent of online learning and the Great Resignation, we're seeing more and more non-traditional age students coming back to school. I personally think that is awesome and amazing. And we don't yet have a ton of research out available on that. So we're going to focus, or what I'm talking about primarily is focusing on traditional age undergraduate students. So these are the Gen Zs. These are the students that are so they're so passionate, all right? They're perfectionists, but they're also prone to anxiety and depression. This age group is characterized by impulsivity, and that is developmental, but it seems to be especially strong within this category, probably because of all the other things that are going on in their lives. Unfortunately, college-age students are measurably the loneliest generation. It used to be senior citizens, now it's college kids. And that is one that just like stops me in my tracks. That is heartbreaking. We bring all these students together and they're still feeling really lonely. We know they're really capable. We know that they are dialed into the state of the world. We know that there's a greater intersectionality of identities, whether that's racial identities, ethnic identities, gender identities, any of these things. But alongside that, we know that there, especially since 2016, we've seen an increase in anti-Blackness across campuses. We've seen an increase in anti-Asian microaggressions for students. And we're still, for our trans students out there, we're still working on making sure that there is a safe learning environment for them. And so with this intersectionality of identities becomes sort of the shadow side of that as well. Considering how important this is and considering the trends of what the population in the United States will become over the next 50 years, right? It will be representative of the global majority, all right? We're going to see more first-generation students. We're going to see more students of color. And so that is going to have to shift how we look at supporting students. All right, so again, we're circling back to this trauma. So studies have reported, so all of that, right? We've got that picture of the student. And now we know that, hey, 56 to 89% of college students have at least one adverse childhood experience. And including the more severe ACEs, 22 reported symptoms consistent with PTSD. This is wild, all right? I believe the CDC put out a study where they said about 75% of students were suffering from depression and anxiety. There is a close connection between trauma and depression and anxiety. That's why trauma has to be folded into this conversation. It has to. All right. So I want to hear from you folks. What type of obstacles have students on your campus encountered when trying to access academic support? So why do they tell you, faculty, I'm really excited to hear from you. Administrators, really excited to hear from you as what your perception is. Why did the students, they might have an appointment, they don't show up, or they need the support and they don't show up? What do you hear about why they're not coming in?
And we have that poll launched, and you can select as many responses as apply to you.
Awesome.
We are seeing
Oh,
a lot of responses come in.
oh, this is great. Really, really helpful. Yeah, let's make sure these go up on the screen, Rachel. This is great.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Okay.
Okay.
All right, let's take a look.
Okay. Let's give it a couple more seconds.
Okay.
I think 80, yeah, we've kind of
Yeah,
hit a
yeah.
ceiling. We're gonna give it 10 more seconds, and then we'll close
Perfect.
it out because we have 85% voting, which is pretty
Great.
darn good.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead and share those responses.
All right. Yes. Okay, so usually our lack of familial or community support, sometimes the factors that come in here are, our first generation students, they don't always know, they're afraid to tell their families at home. Sometimes we see cultural barriers. We definitely see it in terms of accessing mental health support. Sometimes it's there as well. My family expects me to be able to do this on my own. So that's something we see a lot. Mental health barriers, that's exactly where we expect it. This one is a call to action for all of us. Confusion as to where to ask for help. They can't find us. And that's something we'll talk more about. I know that I'm always, I'm at orientation. Every single orientation, we are there. And what I've started doing the last few years is giving parents stickers. I'm like, here, put this on their laptop, put this on the door frame of their room, so that when the time comes that they need support, you can say, look on the back of your door, look on your laptop. I put the sticker there. Because at orientation, it's the start, right? They're so excited. They're not even thinking, I'm going to need some help. Financial pressures to work. Yes, this is growing and growing and growing. Our generation, our Gen Z students especially, they have more financial fear than any of the previous generations. And so that pressure, that financial pressure to work is huge. And then time. We know developmentally, but we also know that living as humans today, we all want more time. So great. Thank you for sharing that. And we'll talk a little bit more about strategies later on as to how we can get out there and make sure students can find us. So thank you, Rachel. Anybody have any questions about the poll?
I see one comment by Heather. She says, many of my students are fearful.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Heather. And that's something else we're going to talk about in our strategies right at the end, is how we can help break down some of those fearful barriers. Thank you for bringing that up. That's a great observation. Okay. Okay, so all right, so what's the solution? This is what I love about the work, right? We've got all these barriers and everything. We are the solution. As folks devoted to learning, we are like the keystone. We are the heart of campus, because the work that we do is the work that drove them to our campus, and it sort of overlaps everything else, right? If you're a student athlete, you have to perform well academically. So that gives us an in, right? If you're a member of a Greek or sorority, fraternity, any of those organizations, you have to maintain a certain GPA. That can be an in for us. Some of the scholarships and awards for academia, you have to maintain a certain GPA. That's an in for us. So we are sort of, I like to say, we are the infrastructure that has a legitimate connection to every single student. And I think that is awesome. And I think that is powerful. And I think that is a huge responsibility. And so we're going to talk now about different strategies where we can continue to make an influence and change despite all that's happening for our students today. But like, give yourselves a pat on the back. Like, you can solve this for students. How awesome is that? All right. like I said, I think our academic support programs were vital to unlocking student potential. Because here's why. They have a positive interaction with you, it can reset and they can begin to have a brand new academic experience, right? We see this with incredibly capable school students that potentially didn't come from the highest achieving high school, right? So they're trying to figure it out, and maybe it's a steep learning curve for them. But guess what? Brand new opportunity, right? Maybe there's a student who had an undiagnosed learning disability and a little bit of work, and all of a sudden they have accommodations they need, they have new insight into how their mind works. Working with you folks, they build some skills, they can have a brand new opportunity. We talk all the time with our students, and we're talking about how there's great potential within all of them. So the center that I work for, our mission is to help students meet their academic and creative potential, whatever that is. And we recognize there's a variety of structures and pathways. Your professor might teach you one way, but you know you learn a different way. You know that your work is over here. So we'll spend time with you. Okay, let's develop the framework. So no matter how the professor is teaching you, you can get it in a way that's going to be meaningful and impactful for you.
I do want to draw attention to a comment that we got from Stephanie because I think it's pretty it's worth talking about. She said, "I am a program coordinator who taught a class the last 2 semesters, so I got the faculty and learning center perspectives. One
Great.
thing that it solidified for me, yeah, was the role of the learning center. So many
Yeah.
aspects of student accommodation and experience goes through faculty and depends on faculty bandwidth. Knowing
Yeah.
about facilities and resources pulls off the dependence on faculty goodwill and or bandwidth."
Thank you. That is absolutely key, right? And working with students with disabilities or students who are struggling, we know that if this is academic accommodations and this is where the student is, there's so much potential within here for skill building, for support, right? And that's why we, as learning centers, we are so involved because we can do so much. Faculty are tasked with so much on their plate, right? And there's so much that we can do to help alleviate that, right? And if we all do, and I'm not saying more work, I'm saying different work, right? If we can just do a different type of work in supporting our students, it's going to make everybody's experience that much more richer, that much more vibrant, and then for the student, that much more opening, right? We can just help them pull back the curtains on the potential that they have. So thank you for bringing that up. And that's what a great experience, right? What a great experience. Anytime we can lead a class is huge. All right. So when we think about the measurable skills that are necessary for college success, executive functioning, critical thinking, emotional intelligence, self-regulation, emotional regulation, and self-efficacy, right? And actually, I feel like we should put emotional intelligence and emotional regulation on the same place, right? Emotional intelligence can be more developmental in terms of you know, just where they are in terms of social and family relationships and things like that. But emotional regulation really ties into that. And self-efficacy. We know research study after research study tells us that if we can get the students to really believe in themselves, right, really believe that they can do it regardless of anything else, they're going to be successful. So we're going to talk now a little bit about some of these. Right, your poll, students are struggling with time. That's why they don't come in. So the skills that we absolutely need to be teaching and intentional about teaching, not taking for granted: time management, organization, metacognition, and the self-regulation. Self-regulation really folds into metacognition really well, but it's so important. That's why I pulled it out. We have to, because we talk about time management. Students come in all the time, I want time management. Great. Tell me what you do. I don't, I have a calendar. Okay. Right. So they know it's there, but we need to be really intentional about building out these time management skills. Time management and organization, we take for granted, right? We take them from high school where every single thing is structured into college where it's a lot more wide open, right? Most students probably are not aware of the time commitment outside of class needed in college, right? In high school, they tell you everything, here you go. And yes, in college, you get your syllabi, right? But you're in class 3 days a week. Most students don't pause to think, okay, I'm in 3 days a week, but I only take 4 classes. It seems like there's going to be a lot more expectation for me to work independently outside of class. We have to teach them. So we have to be very intentional about teaching these skills to students. Metacognition and self-regulation is huge for college students. They need to be setting goals. They need to be planning, and then they need to be reflecting on those things as they go through, right? That's the self-regulation. That's the reflection piece. A lot of our students set goals and they're off and running. And it's really helpful for us to spend time with them. Okay, now you're 1 month into this. What's working, what isn't? And that regulation, that readjusting. And we as learning centers need to be intentional about building these skills into what we're doing. Critical thinking. We intentionally need to model a critical thinking process. I love college writing classes. Well, I love the philosophy behind college writing classes. I don't know if I'm alone in this, but on our campus, first year college writing is the one that sends our students, it knocks the wind out of them, right? Because they come in, I was a great writer in high school. And then on their first draft, they get a C and they're just devastated. And, the way ours is set up is you can revise that, right? And it is designed to make you a better writer no matter what. So nobody really gets an A on their first draft because it is designed to stretch you. It is designed to improve your writing, so no matter what. But we don't tell the students that. And so we see so many students, I get so many parents calling me when their students have just received their first writing back. But the great thing about the writing style, the writing process, is it models a critical thinking, right? Okay, now I got to problem solve. All right, let me evaluate. This is how I wrote it last time. It didn't work great. I'm going to make a decision next time or in this draft to change this up. Gives them an opportunity to analyze and reason with themselves and what they're putting together. I think we as learning centers can do a better job modeling critical thinking. We can do that through mind maps. We can do that through flowcharts. Again, another skill, another process that we can be really intentional about building into the work that we do. All right, our emotional regulation. We were talking earlier, I believe Heather was her name, after Heather's comment where teaching the class takes the bandwidth off of everybody else. I don't know what's happening on your campuses. A lot of times on our campuses, folks tend to pathologize any emotion or struggle, right? So if a student approaches their professor and they're really upset, the professors might say, you need to go to the counseling center. And it's true, right? Maybe that student does need the counseling center, but just because a student is having an instance of a heightened emotion doesn't mean that therapy is their only answer. Again, right? We've got so much space in this emotional regulation that we can work on. And so what are the things that you can do in our centers? Mindfulness techniques. We, at our university, we have a campus-wide subscription to calm.com. So we can encourage students to do a meditation. In our academic coaching program, if a student comes in and they're really, really particularly agitated that day, we will spend 5 or 10 minutes. All right, let's pick one. Let's do a mindfulness technique. Let's come back into this moment and let's see if we can regulate these emotions a little bit. Another really key factor of emotional regulation is changing the narrative. All right. Our students will have, I once was working with a student and they had just failed their first econ exam. I think it was microeconomics. And they were able to tell me in detail how they would never get to law school because they had failed that first microeconomics exam. And so I thought, wow, okay, we are really, they really need some help in changing the narrative, right? And that can be hard, right? We know the trans-theoretical model of change takes time, change is incremental. And so I like to just throw in my favorite when I'm trying to work with a student and get them there. How about, can we add yet? All right. You know, I failed this. Yeah, but that's just the first one yet. Let's see how it goes. Or, so far. right? I failed this. Well, it's only have you done so far, right? So these little tiny changes. Rachel, do we have another question?
We do.
Excellent.
Felicia is interested knowing if you have any recommendations for textbooks or curriculums on college success skills, or any materials to teach some of the skills you were talking about, rather than just having the experience.
Yeah.
I taught when I worked in higher ed. I taught a couple of semesters of a freshman seminar course, and at the time, I thought that the textbook we used was great. And looking back on it, I actually think, I won't name it. I thought it was a little problematic. We do have a recommendation coming in from Julie for the On-Course book.
Oh yeah. Encores. I forgot about Encores. I'm an Encores ambassador from like a million years ago.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if it expires. Maybe I'm not anymore. Um, Encores is great. You know, I would really recommend find with as with any of these things, right? Like when we're out, because we do a lot of campus-wide training, right? So we do our training with advisors, and so we encourage them to look at a lot of different things and find the one that feels good to you, because that is going to make you feel most authentic when you're working with your student. So honestly, I would just go to YouTube and watch some mindfulness videos. You know, so make sure it's something. And here's the thing: this is what I love about the work that we do. The time that we spend trying to develop these strategies for students, they always benefit us too, right? So in your pursuit to find a good mindfulness technique for your students, you're gonna give yourself this gift, this skill. Um, and so really find the ones that work best for you. The mindfulness techniques, I will be honest, I do in my office. I keep a yoga mat out. And so during the day, especially if I'm really stressed out, I sit down and just do some really gentle stretching. But take a look at YouTube. You know, that would honestly be where I would start, because I want you to feel comfortable in it as well. And I'm sure there's tons of recommendations coming in from other folks, but the most important element is finding the one that works best for you, because that is then the best strategy. And you can share your experience. And if you have an experience to share, that's going to be more authentic to your student. Do we have more coming in, Rachel?
We do. We do have one more
Excellent.
question from Kendra. She asks, do you have any advice for working against student apathy, lack of engagement, or overall fatigue in students, especially with all the factors you mentioned earlier?
Oh, yeah. And we're going to dig right into that. We're going to dig right into that. Absolutely. And that's a great question, right? That is absolutely a great question. And we're going to, and you know, some of this right now, right? Changing the narrative, right? Spend time with that student. Why are they apathetic? Maybe they have been sort of ignored in their educational experience, right? Maybe they haven't had a chance to have any ownership over their educational experience. Find out what's important to them. You know, we want to help them change that narrative and develop a growth mindset, right? This student, they're apathetic because they maybe think it's hopeless. Maybe they have no sort of ability to see how they're going to grow and benefit from this. And so talking to them can be huge. All right. But we'll dig into that a little bit more. Noticing the physical symptoms. I've started doing this more and more often with the groups that I work with. All right. We have some undergraduates doing on our campus for a research symposium, and we will do a physical body scan. And so if you've never done this, it's great. You just spend a little bit of time and just work your way up, starting at the soles of your feet, your toes, and working up through your body to notice, do you have any tight spots? Do you feel any tingling? Any of this stuff. Our students are so busy, they're so focused on what's right in front of them, they don't always take the time to pay attention to their body. What we know as, right, when students are upset, they're snapping, right? They just need, something's going on, they need some regulation. And if they're aware of their body, they can feel this building before it gets to that point. But we have to model this for them. So giving time to, hey, how do you feel? How much water have you had today? Like, these are little things, but our students are so busy that we need to model it for them. And then this positive self-talk. All right, we have to constantly be showing our students how to positively send these messages to themselves. Again, some of our students might have never had this, right? And they're battling imposter syndrome, and they feel like there's a lack of family support. because they're first generation and maybe their family doesn't actually have an understanding of what it means to be off at university. So, all right. And again, right, the self-efficacy, this individual's belief in their capacity to execute behaviors necessary to produce a specific performance attainments. Bandura, 1977. What a great year. All right. This is what we're going for. This is what we want to work with our students to build within themselves. All right. So we've talked about some of those really, really easy ones. These next ones are tougher. This is where the real work begins. And the great thing about that is that when we really dig in and we're comfortable being uncomfortable, this is where the magic can happen. This is where we can go to places we didn't even dream of before. All right. This is what I believe is going to carry us through. So we're going to talk about, right, we've talked about the changing landscape, what our students are experiencing. We need to be rooted in, which is ironic, right? Rooted in approaches that are dynamic. We call it rigid flexibility within our center. And so I think it comes from these three dynamic approaches. I think if we can embrace these three philosophies campus-wide, it'll be a whole different experience for any student that walks through our gate, moves through our gate. So the first one is trauma-informed pedagogy. We have to adapt a trauma-informed pedagogy as institutions. We also need to adopt culturally responsive pedagogy and universal design for learning. Now, I know that on every campus, you have little pockets of places that are doing these things. And that is great. That is a great start. Remember, we are the heart of campus. We are the heart. And so if we can lead with these three philosophies, we have a huge opportunity to impact others. So let's talk first about trauma-informed pedagogy. What is it? It's an organizational structure or framework that involves understanding, recognizing, and responding to the effects of all types of trauma on well-being and behavior. Dr. Bloom really put it simply, trauma-informed care is about changing the helping paradigm from what is wrong with you to what happened to you. This is huge. All right. We had the question, oops, this is, well, we'll come back to this slide because I messed this up. But that's an important slide. So I will fix that and we'll circle back to that right at the end. But when we're talking about trauma-informed pedagogy, we're talking about all the different ways that trauma personifies itself. All right, we had that question earlier, right? Apathy. That could very well be a trauma response. All right, students showing up late, students dropping out of school within the first year, despite being successful. All right, students asking for extensions on papers, students being disruptive. All of these things can be a response to trauma. So if we can hold space about this paradigm, right, we can make a big change. And I'll share some growth, that I've had in my professional experience. So about 100 years ago, I was running a tutoring and mentoring program, and I was very much a stickler about you have to show up on time. You must be at training on time. And if students didn't show up on time, if they didn't let me know ahead of time that they weren't going to be on time, they were not allowed in. They would have to reschedule their training. And I thought this is so important. Like, I believed in my heart, this is the most important way to do it. And one morning, a student showed up 10 minutes late to training. I didn't want to stop training, catch them up, right? I didn't let them in. I just, and I see now how damaging that was. But I talked to the student. I was like, what's going on? After the fact, right? And the student tells me what their home life is like, and that they were up late, at first taking a parent to the emergency room and then staying home, taking care of their kids, their siblings, right? I was not looking at leadership from a trauma-informed lens, right? I did not center the student in the experience. Trauma-informed pedagogy says we must center these students. Trauma-informed pedagogy holds space for the apathy of that student because of what they've been through. And so what we have to do is we have to make this connection. right? We know there's research out there that states if a student feels connected to one faculty member or support staff, they're more likely to persist there. Trauma-informed pedagogy says if you really get to know the student, you know, there's a better opportunity that they can trust, right? That they can open up their experience a little bit. And so that was a huge learning curve for me. And I'm glad I learned it when I did, right? So I have to, this is that rigid flexibility, right? What do I have to do? I have to get to know all of the folks that work for me. I really do. And then I have to model for them how they can get to know all of the students that they're engaging with. Because when we know each other, we have greater capacity to support them through what we need. You know, another trauma-informed approach that we've taken, because it used to be in some of our programs, if you're 15 minutes late, it's a no-show and no more, and that's it for the day, and you've been recorded as a no-show. And now what we do is your scheduled is from 1 to 2. You show up at 1:30, okay, you get 30 minutes, right? We're not going to say you can't get support because we're holding space for whatever prevented you from getting there, right? And so those are some of the trauma-informed changes that I've been able to make. But trauma-informed pedagogy, we got to make this connection, and then we have to give students a new experience. Let's give them some power. Let's give them some ownership. Because if you're in a trauma response all the time, you feel as though you don't have any power, you don't have any ownership. And so can we develop strategies and frameworks within the work that we do that give that power back to our students? Again, we got a question. Yes.
We do have a question.
I love it.
Hillary asks, how do we hold space while also preparing them for the work world that has hard deadlines?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that is great, Hillary. And I think we can do that through building rapport and sharing, right? Okay, and this is what I think is so great, again, about the work that we do, right? Higher education is like this magical place where, like, if you stumble, there's going to be many options to help you get back on your feet. And I think we need to build into that education, Hillary, like that exact thing. Great. I'm glad we're talking about this because this is going to be really different in the future. So let's talk about, you know, okay, you're late here, all right? Let's say you're always 20 minutes late. Let's see if we can make one change so you're 15 minutes late, right? Because we know little changes over time can result in big, significant changes. So we don't expect students, if, I will say my partner is never on time for anything. So what do? I lie about the time we have to leave every single day. Listen, it starts at 9. We have to leave here at 8:30. It doesn't start at 9, it starts at 9:30. So we can leave at 8:45 and we're okay, right?
That's so funny.
I'm not encouraging, right? But I recognize, right? But this is what we've established, right? This is a workaround that we have established.
Yeah.
All right. And we can do the same thing with our students. Okay, let's talk about it. Oh, and then you couldn't find it. How about this? Let's pack your bag the night before. Here's a checklist. Before you go to bed, make sure everything is in your bag. So in the morning you get up and go, you're only 15 minutes late.
Yeah.
Right? Because this is exactly right. Hillary, you bring up a great point, right? There is a bandwidth in which that students they will bump up against. And we know that everything is changing. We know that the world is changing. But Hillary, having these discussions now and talking about these little small incremental changes are huge. I'm trying to push, I don't want to do it, but I'm trying to push on our campus, like graduation prep classes, because we talk all the time. Yay, you're graduating. It's awesome. Well, it's also really overwhelming. You go from 120 vacation days a year to 15. Like, there's a lot we need to prep our students for. And Hillary, exactly what you're talking about could fold in so well into that. Could we fold these ideologies, these life preparations into a senior capstone? But, these little incremental changes can make a big difference. We don't have to do it all at once. We can do little tiny things that can help, or we could get a trauma-informed world, right? You folks can have that influence.
Stephanie has a suggestion as well. She says, if it's helpful, I add a policy in both my work and my class to ask folks when they think is a reasonable deadline, if they can't make the original, so that they have ownership. And Kristen also says that they have, I assume at her institution, an adulting class.
No, this is great, right? That exact thing, giving them ownership, right? Let's bring them into it. Okay, what do you
Yeah,
think is acceptable, right? What do you want to work on? Where, right? You know your life better than anybody else. Where could we make a small change?
yeah,
Oh, perfect, right? Bring them into it. Some of what trauma is having no control. Let's
yeah.
bring them in. What would you like?
And I think it's important to remember as well. I just want to say, like, that no two, like, every industry has different standards, and even different
Yeah,
workplaces within the industries will have different standards for how hard deadlines are. And
yeah,
it is, I think in the real world, you can usually negotiate a deadline if things come up. So I think, like, yes, hold students accountable, but from my own experience, both as an instructor and as a person in a job, uh, I think giving them that flexibility is not just important, but it also does reflect, in a lot of cases, the real world.
absolutely. And then if we're going to ask them, right, or encourage them to do that, we need to teach them that skill, right? How do you negotiate? How do you, when I'm working with my students, I always tell them start with what you've done.
Right.
I started working on this and the research, there's just so much. It's taken me. Great. Start with what you've done. Tell them what you need. Tell them what you'd like.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and again, skill building, right? We've got to model this. And that can be a workshop. Negotiating deadlines. We have resources just for talking to faculty. How do I talk to my faculty about my accommodation letter? How do I ask for an extension? Our students are nervous, our students are anxious. Let's model this for them. We can do it. This is great. Okay. Again, I apologize for this slide.
Oh, Vanessa
Well,
has another suggestion, and then we did
yeah.
have another question come in. Vanessa asks, says, when I do trainings, I offer some kind of ticket that says, "Yay, I'm on time," and offer some kind of small door prize. They have learned to come on time.
Listen, we've been bribing students since the beginning of time and it works. This is fantastic. I used to give all my students one get out of jail free card. You get one. You get a pass. No questions asked. When I was teaching, you could attach it to a paper and turn the paper in whenever. No questions asked. You're late for work, whatever. Everybody gets one, right? But again, right, like that is somewhat flexible. That's not necessarily trauma informed, right? Because trauma informed holds space for you live in a potentially traumatic place, But this is great. Yeah,
Yeah.
love that.
We have, I know we're getting close to the end of the hour, so I do want to be mindful,
Gosh,
but we have had another couple of questions come in. Do you want to address them now, or save them for the end?
let's save them for the end because I really want to introduce everything else.
Okay.
Great. Okay. Culturally responsive pedagogy. This is Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings, or the Queen as I like to call her, recognizes the importance, again, we're centering students' cultural references in all aspects of learning. Higher education was not built to recognize or center all cultures, right? Higher education was built for affluent, able-bodied white folks. And so we're trying to retrofit this now. So cultural responsive pedagogy needs to center students' experiences regardless of their culture. This is the work for us. This is the work that most folks are really uncomfortable with. It's okay. It's okay to be uncomfortable. We need, just like learning, right? It needs to be uncomfortable for it to be impactful. So this is what we all have to do. We all have to take action. All right. We have to examine our own implicit biases. If we are humans in this world, we have implicit biases. It's not a bad thing. I spent time talking to my father about this. He's in his 70s. He's very much of a mindset. He's like, I don't have any biases. I'm like, you're a human in the world. You absolutely do. All right. Um, and so it's okay. It is okay to look inside yourself and say, oh gosh, I do have these biases. And that's where the work is. Because if we recognize those biases, we can overcome them. All right. We need to study other cultures. And this work of studying other cultures needs to be self-driven. It doesn't mean I go up and ask other folks from other cultures what they need. It means I study it, and then when I'm working with them, you know, I can hold space for understanding and ask them then, hey, okay, what if, you know, what would be helpful for you? Just like in trauma-informed pedagogy, culturally responsive pedagogy, we need to center the student in the middle of it. All right. We need to ensure diversity and representation when we're hiring folks. All right. When you're hiring your staff, all the hiring that we do, we send it out to all of our affinity groups intentionally. All right. Like we'll post the job and we'll send it out to our affinity groups. We send it out to our first gen groups to make sure that everyone is aware of that they can come and work for us, right? This is important because we know that some students with different backgrounds have a much easier time navigating the hiring structure, for instance. And one of the really, really easy things that we can do is we can be aware of global holy days. Take some work, but you can build in each of your centers a collective calendar of religious days of observation. My heart, when I was at Emory, we had a very high Jewish student population, all right? And it was really a struggle for them because you'd have some faculty that understood the high holy days in the fall, and so they made sure that there were no major assignments or exams during that time. Other professors perhaps weren't aware of it or perhaps didn't prioritize it, right? And so here are these students really trying to figure this out. You know, think about your trainings, think about things like this. This is awareness. These are great places to start. Universal design for learning. This is where my heart beats. It's a way of thinking about teaching and learning that helps give all students equal opportunity to succeed. Now, I think COVID did a great job. We got some great UDL principles in there. On our campus, we started recording every class. I don't know why we weren't recording every class anyway. All right. So universal design, hey, we want everyone, right, regardless of their experiences, regardless of their ability level, to have equal opportunity to succeed. One of my professors said, every student, every opportunity, every day. All right. That's what we're going for. And so how does that look? Flexible ways of learning. So as for learning centers, think about our training. Is our training hybrid? Is it asynchronous? All right. Can students access videos, download materials for screen readers, right? Like, are students having multiple ways of engaging? All right. Thinking about the services you deliver. We have some that you can schedule an appointment. We have some that are drop-in. We have some that are online. All right. We have our website that offers our same resources for folks to watch a video or to download materials. Lots of different ways to engage. When we're asking folks to demonstrate what they know, can they write a paper? Can they give a presentation? Can they voice memo you? All right. So many different ways of representation. And then, sorry, that's also like the action and expression. I sort of blended them together there. But this is what we're hoping for. Okay, we need to shift. I'm sorry, I'm getting nervous. We're almost out of time. I hate that. So we need to get away from perfection. We want it towards growth. And I think we can do that by normalizing the struggle, preventing opportunities for academic risk-taking, encouraging new endeavors, being adaptive, promoting skills, because that's what's going to be really helpful. And then developing a personal narrative. It's not so much that they struggle. Tell me what you learned. Tell me what was happening for you. Tell me how you came out of this. And these are some other skills that we can do for our students. So Rachel, what would you recommend? Should we just go to questions now?
It's up to you. We have 2 questions that we haven't gotten to yet. If you, let me see. Otherwise, if you have any final slides you want to get to, or we can jump into our questions.
Yeah, let's move into our questions right now.
All right. So Kristen asks, how do you get students to attend your workshops?
This is great. We trick them a lot of times. So this is a great question. One of the things that we have really sort of expanded upon is we have built relationships with our faculty, and we get ourselves invited into classes. So at the start of the semester, and actually I'll do it this summer, we put together packages for our faculty members. We've got 10 minutes on time management, 10 minutes on organization, and then it sort of grows from there. And so we reach out to faculty members and they invite us into their class. This is where somebody mentioned earlier, the fear. How do we get students over the fear of asking for help? We go to them. All right, we go to them. And so that's one thing that we do. Another thing that we do is we make all of our workshops available on our website. So we've recorded them and then we promote them up there. We can see students are downloading them, watching them. It's great. We also, we do it twice a year. We do a big twice a semester, mid-semester and finals. We go out we have this one very busy intersection on campus. We bring our academic coaches out there, we bring our resources, and we bring food, and we meet the students where they're at. And as we're building these connections, they are then more able to connect with us. So we go to them. We also work very closely with our academic advisors to promote the work that we do. We're a mandatory advising campus. So that means every student has to meet with their advisor at least twice a semester. So we go through our advisors to make sure they're connected.
Awesome. And then the last question we have so far is, in trauma-informed pedagogy, how do I ensure that I'm not doing more harm than good? This is from Talia. I want to help, but I don't know that I'd necessarily be prepared for everything that might be thrown at me.
Yeah, so Talia, this is great. So that's a great question, and thank you for asking. And like I said, this is the beginning, right? So there's tons of great resources out there on trauma-informed pedagogy. So trauma-informed pedagogy doesn't mean you have to dig into the trauma. You don't have to do it. You're not a mental health care professional, so you don't have to do that. All you want to do is center the student. All right. Of course, if students disclose to us, instances of abuse, things like that, we are probably all mandatory reporters in some way, shape, or form. And so that is one element of it. But trauma-informed pedagogy is just about having a new relationship with the student. All right, where we are patient with them. We ask them what they want to work on. It's not about, you don't have to dig into whatever is traumatizing them. All right, we just have to find ways of being that are more supportive and that give them more options to grow. So like I said, a great way to provide trauma-informed care is, okay, so if a student misses an appointment a couple times, or even one time, okay, we can reschedule, or is there something else that might work better for you, right? So we can give them some power, we can give them some ownership. That could be a great strategy. Again, you don't have to dig into the trauma, you're just trying to find a different way to support them, right? Trauma-informed pedagogy tells us we know our students have had traumatic experiences. We know it. And so we need to have different sort of opportunities to engage with them. And again, dig into this stuff. I'm not an expert in it. I'm a huge advocate, and I'm still learning myself, right? Because that's a big piece of this is that we're always growing. It's this growth mindset.
And I know we're out of time, and I know folks have to leave. Just as a reminder, we are going to be sending the recording, and if you do have any additional questions, you can email them out. And Stephanie had a good comment. She said, one of my supplemental instruction supers a few years ago did some research on modes of participation and how speaking in class rewarded certain groups over others. It was really helpful for framing why we asked our SI leaders to use and reward different modes of participation, such as writing, working as a team. And she has, I think we're kind of out of time here. We have one more question before we wrap up. She says, when you are cultivating these relationships with faculty, is it through particular colleges or more departmental or person to person?
Oh, it's all of the ways, right? It is all of the ways. So I always go through the relationships that I've built. Hey, who is your contact in whatever college? Who is your contact in whatever skill or school, right? So it's all the ways. I have gone through our faculty senate. I have gone through our assistant provost, and then I've gone through the faculty members that I work with. They recommend me to their friends, right? So it is all the ways, but that is a great start, right? We know that there's so much fear of the unknown with this generation of college students. And so let me just put, I'm so sorry that we didn't get through everything. Let this be the start of the conversation. Please email me directly. It's my email address is loppache@usc.edu. I'd love for us to work together moving forward.
Yeah, we covered a lot today. We had great feedback coming in, great questions. So really happy to see all that participation. I am sorry we didn't get to all the slides, Julie.
I know we talked
Uh,
about this too. I was like, no, we're good. We're going to be fine. I apologize. So this is a
no,
start.
it's
We'll work
okay.
together more.
It's okay. Yeah, absolutely. And for those of you still with us, again, when you leave the session, you will be redirected to a survey. We really appreciate your feedback. We will be sending out the recording. And of course, if you do have questions, you can contact Julie. You can also contact me. And my email is in the chat there. It's rachelc@engineerica.com. We're getting a lot of great feedback in the comments. People are saying thank you, that this was great. So we thank you, Julie, so much for your time today. And I think with that, we're gonna wrap up.
Perfect. If
All
you
right.
loved it, let Rachel know. We'll do a follow-up.
Yep. And thank you everybody for being here today with us. And we will see you at our next keynote.
Awesome.
Bye.
Thanks, y'all. Bye.